Okay, welcome. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Bridge Code of Jewish Law, Chapter
Thank you.
40. Yeah, Chapter 40, number 4. We're up to number 4. So we're learning about the laws of washing your hands for the meal. So till now we spoke about the cup or the vessel, because we actually have to pour water from a vessel. And the vessel has to be whole, can't be cracked, has to be something that can stand up on its own. Now, number 4, we're going to start to speak about the water or the amount of water. So, Dalet, number 4. Shir Amayim Kasha L'Shar B'Simsim. Now, the amount of water you need, it's hard to give an exact amount, right? And because essentially what we're going to say is you have to generously pour water over your hand, and different people have different size hands. When it comes to other things, let's say, for an example, the amount of wine you have to drink by Kiddush, there's an amount, the kazais. It's 86 mils, or whatever it is in square, whatever it is in liquid ounces. There's a set measurement. Over here, it's not so much a set measurement because it also depends on the size of the person's hand. Al kol yad ma'im b'shefa. You have to pour over the entire hand. Entire hand means the wrist all the way around to the fingertip of the middle finger, right? The entire hand. And liberally, like a good amount. Damar Rav Chisda, as Rav Chisda says, An I washed handfuls of water, and I was granted handfuls of goodness. That's what you should do. So person shouldn't be cheap on it, and they should pour plenty of water on their hands. I will just tell one story, just to I guess we'll put a caveat on the on saying that you have to pour lots of water. There was a story with Rabbi Sol Salanter, right? He was the founder of the Musa movement. It's this movement in order to be able to improve their selves, to make themselves better people. And so he was known to do every mitzvah in the optimum way possible. So one time he was a guest at someone's house, and the person decided he's going to watch how Rabbi Sol Salanter washes his hands. He's very interested in seeing how he washes his hands because he wants to learn from him how to do it the best possible way. And I was expecting he's going to fill up the cup from the barrel of water with, really pour a large amount of water in his hands. And he sees that he poured the barest minimum of water, just whatever he had to do, not a drop more. So afterwards, this fellow asked me, so Slanti says, Rabbi, I would have thought you would have poured plenty. So he says to him, let me ask you a question. What happens when the barrel of water runs out? Right? It's not like today, you just turn on the faucet, now comes more water. What happens? He said they're gonna fill it from the well. He says, yeah, who's gonna fill it? And they pointed to a maid, an orphan girl, who worked there as a maid. And they said, she's gonna take it to the well and fill it. So he says, okay, that's your answer. You don't have to be frum at other people's expense. So if I would have poured excess water, which would encourage other people to really use the water liberally, then we're going to create extra work for this orphan girl unnecessarily. Right? So it's good to do things the most preferred way. Obviously, you have to do it at a certain minimum, but in a better way, not at other people's expense. Okay, so we had several people join us, so welcome. So we're Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 40, in the middle of number 4. So how do we wash our hands? But not in Techila Yad Yamin. we pour the water over our right hand. V'achakach yad smol, and afterwards on the left hand. So he's saying here to wash hands one time per hand. Now, technically, that's the minimum requirement. You find very few Jews today still only wash the hands once per hand. Quite a few people do too, but I'm sure you've been to most places. You see they wash three times each time. So I would say 2 and 3 are the two most common practices today. And the idea behind this is to also wash off the water. You know, you're washing off any tumah, any spiritual impurities, and then you still got some water on your hand that contains this. You wash that off. But anyway, whatever you do the right hand first. So if you're doing it twice, 2 times the right hand. If you wash 3 times, then you pour 3 times over the right hand. And then whatever you do is the left hand. So 3 on the right, 3 on the left. The water should go over the entire hand. What does this mean? From the wrist. And there shouldn't be one drop, one part of your hand that did not get covered in water. And therefore, you should part your fingers. The thing of part your fingers a little bit so the water gets between the fingers as well. If you hold them tightly together, then although it'll cover your hand, but the whole hand won't get wet. And you hold your hands up slightly upwards. That way the water goes over all the fingers, the fingertips, the entire length of the fingers, the circumference of the fingers. And you do this in one pouring, okay, even though we're doing 3 pourings. But in other words, the entire hand gets wet, gets washed with the water in one pouring. And then the second time again, the entire hand. And the third time.
Right. I'm going to make some latkes because they'll be warm.
And therefore, you shouldn't use a utensil, a vessel that has a narrow mouth, a narrow opening. Because if you do that, it won't spread over. It'll be too concentrated. Even though it might contain a lot of water, but it's only got a little tiny opening. It'll only go in one little place of your hand. But and the water won't come all out, cover the entire hand in one shot. And it's good to do on each hand twice. And as I said in many places today, including Chabad Chassidim, the custom is 3 times. But you go to places, you'll see some people do it twice, whatever it happens to be. So that is, David.
I'm sure you've heard this question before, but what happens if a person's in an emergency situation where there's no cup and he has a faucet and he wants to try to wash from the faucet?
So it's going to depend. So it's very unusual that you can't get any cup or anything. Right? Even a water bottle, something. So the first thing, if you don't have a nice washing cup, that we have these nice big ones with 2 handles, it makes it very easier to wash 2 hands. We should at least try and get something if we can. So whether it's a coffee cup, a plastic cup, a water bottle, something. So that's number 1. So if someone really can't even do that, right? There is nothing. Okay, so if someone's in a hospital or something, usually they can bring them a cup. Let's say they're in the wilderness. They're in the wilderness. So we're going to later talk about if you would dunk your hands, immerse them in something that would be a kosher mikveh, that also washes them. And the bracha, instead of saying on the tilas yadayim, on the washing of the hands, we say al tevilas yadayim, on the immersing of the hands. Right, so a person was at the beach, there was well, not necessarily every lake, but let's say a river, different things like that. So a person could immerse the hands. Now your question though is there's no cup, there's no anything, there's no access to a cup, but there's a faucet. So number one, I'll say that would be pretty unusual. You would have in a place where there's a faucet. So in other words, you're not in the wilderness, and you couldn't at least get a plastic cup or something. It doesn't have to be a kosher utensil, at least something. But let's say in theory you can't. So if he could use it, first of all, what I'm going to say is not necessarily going to work. But if it does work, he has to at least turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. So the fact that it comes out is he's the one making it happen. Not that it's like it's a flow, and he's sticking his hand into the flow. He's making it go. But so that could potentially, we're also going to learn there's going to be times to say a person has maybe a person has a cast over half the hand. It'd be better to put on a rubber glove or something over that hand and cover it totally. Just wash the other hand. So I mean, I think Marcheshvan, in the modern world, in a city, it's very unusual not to be able to get a plastic cup or a bottle of some sort or a coffee cup or something. I've been traveling, and sometimes you often, let's say Nagelwasser in the morning when the plane was going the whole night. One of the coffee places, just ask them for a coffee cup. They normally don't mind to give you a cup, even if you didn't buy a coffee. Something like that. Okay. It's number 5. So now after you washed both your hands. So let's stick with the custom of 3 times on the right, 3 on the left. Shashim biyachad, you rub them together, v'yagbim neged roisho, and you hold them up opposite your head, but most people, at least to hold it up. K'moshe Amar Kosov, as the pasuk, the verse says, so u'yideichem v'goyim, right? You should raise your hands. And so you raise them before you dry them, you make the following blessing. So it doesn't have the whole blessing here. So we've left out Baruch Tov Hashem and the Kelim El Cholim, the beginning of regular blessing. But Hashem Kedushanim Mitzvaysav, who sanctified us, made us holy with your mitzvahs, and he commanded us on this time about washing our hands. Now we're going to have an interesting point over here. Even though when it comes to mitzvahs, you normally make the bracha before you do the mitzvah, right? You put on tefillin, you make the bracha before you put on tefillin. You light the Hanukkah candles, you make the bracha before you light Hanukkah candles. Every mitzvah, okay, Shabbos candles is an exception. For pretty much every mitzvah, you make the bracha before you do it. Nevertheless, now with the washing of the hands, since sometimes the hands aren't clean before the washing. When we say not clean, I mean if it's physical dirt, you have to wash the physical dirt off before you wash your hands, ritually, for lack of a better word, for bread. But we mean tumatara, spiritually not clean. So sometimes a person's hands are not clean. They've touched a part of their body. Let's say, any part of your body is normally covered. It should even include scratching your head, the scalp. But there might be parts of your body that, someone, they, put their hand down the back, scratch their back, down the shirt or something. They touch so there'll be times, okay, therefore, the sages instituted that when you make the blessing, it's always going to be after you wash, because we don't want to differentiate. This guy made the blessing first because his hands were clean. He just needed to wash for bread. And then the next guy, he washed second, and then next three people made the bracha after they washed, and then the next one makes before he washes. We don't have this guy does that and that guy does this. We need to make this. They instituted should be the same for everyone. So therefore, since some people are not in position to make a blessing before they wash their hands, everyone makes the blessing afterwards. So that's reason number one. And another reason. Now the drying of the hand is part of the mitzvah. Because it's not just washing, it's washing and drying, right? So it's just something else to bear in mind. Some people aren't very careful to make sure their hands are totally dry when they make hamotzi. And before we touch the bread, their hands have to be totally dry. So the drying is part of the mitzvah. So even though he washed, the mitzvah is not finished yet till he dries. So if he makes the bracha before he dries his hand, then he's also doing it, before the mitzvah, so to speak. Okay. Mishnah lishbech al kol yad shtei pomim. Yishbei techila kol yad pam achas v'shashim v'vorech. V'acha yishbei pam shneis al kol yad. So he says over here that a person who washes their hands twice, he should wash each hand once, make the blessing, then afterwards wash a second time. Okay, I gotta say I've never seen this. I've been plenty of places where people wash their hands twice as opposed to three, and I don't think I ever saw that people. I'm not saying it doesn't happen anymore, but just because I didn't see it, I didn't go to every place in the Jewish world. But I haven't seen it that people wash once, make a blessing, and then wash again. People either wash each hand twice, or wash each hand 3 times, or whatever it happens to be. But you wash, so we're going to stick with wash each hand 3 times. 3 times on the right, 3 with the left. If someone has a different custom, they've been doing that they got from their fathers to wash twice or whatever it is, then by all means, keep your custom. But if we're taking on things or we don't have a chain of family custom, we'll go for 3 times in each hand.
Are
So
you,
you
are you
wash,
talking about washing for hamotzi or washing for?
washing
No.
for motzi. Yeah, washing for bread. So you wash 3 times, and then you're particular, very careful to make sure you dry your hands properly. Now, and you shouldn't dry them on your clothes. This aids a person to forget their study, the Torah they've learned. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I have enough trouble remembering things to start with. I don't need any extra help to forget. Right? So there's certain things that we'll see as we go through this book. There's certain things that we do that it's not a prohibition per se, but it has a spiritual effect that causes a person to forget their Torah learning or not retain it as long as they could. So this is one of them. Drying your hands on your clothes if you once you wash for bread. So try and have a towel or something, paper towel, tea towel, something like that. Hand towel. All right. Vav, number 6. Im ach shava chamayim al yadu achas.
Rabbi,
Now we have a situation. Yeah.
and they're not drying them on your clothes because it's damaging to your health. Is that based on Kabbalah?
Yeah. Well, it makes you forget. Yeah. That's a spiritual.
But I'm saying that the source is Kabbalah.
It's things even in Gemara. So
There's
there's
stuff
a lot
in
of
the Gemara.
spiritual things that are in Gemara as well.
Not that there's things in the Gemara from Kabbalah. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, vice versa. I mean, it's the same authors. You look at the names. It's a lot of the same people. Sometimes the people are known by different names. Like for those who've been learning Gemara, you have Rav, right? Rav and Shmuel. So Rav's name was Abba. So he's the Rav Abba of the Zohar. Rabbi Abba, it's in the Zohar, is Rav. And just since we mentioned them, just a side point, interesting Rav's trivia. I don't know if it's actually going to help you learning, but interesting thing. Sometimes in Gemara, Rav is asked a question, and he's asked they challenge his view, and it says B'shosik. He was quiet. He didn't answer. So the commentators explained that he had an answer. Why was he quiet? Because he gave a ruling based on Kabbalah, and that wasn't public in those days. So he just kept quiet. He didn't answer them back. He didn't explain to them what his reasoning was. So you have it. It's not uncommon. I mean, it's since it was pointed out to me that's the reason for Shosik. I've noticed it a few times. So I mean, I never kept count. I can't tell you exactly how many times in the entire Talmud it is, but it's a good few times. Anyway, so yep, makes a person forget. And of course, we don't dry our hands on someone else's clothes, right? Because that's just not nice. It doesn't make either of you forget because your hands in his clothes, but it's not a nice thing to do. That's So what we're going to mention over here, we'll just give a different example to the one they're going to bring here.
It'll help his memory because he'll remember to not wash his hands next to you when you're washing your hands.
That's right. Keep his hands away. Stay away. We so our hands essentially have touched places or things that we need to wash. And again, it's more of a spiritual hygiene than a physical hygiene. But it's once we wash and our hands are dry, so maybe I've washed and someone else didn't wash. So if both our hands are dry and my hand touches his hand, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't make such a big difference. It doesn't transfer. But if my hands are wet, still I've washed and my hands are wet, then it transfers to the water. So before we get to another person, we're talking about even ourselves. So hey, number 5. So after you, sorry, number 6, we're up to number 6. Number 6, Vov. Imla achas shavach hamayim al yada achas. You poured water on one hand. You've washed one hand. And then what do? As you're transferring the cup, as an example, doesn't have to be when transferring the cup, just an example. Naga shavayada shniya. Your washed wet hand now touches your own second hand, which has not yet been washed. Oi, adam acha nagasham. Or it touches, or another person touches your wet hand. So what happens? Azai nitmu hamayim shal yadoi. The water that's on your hand becomes tome, because a liquid can become tome even from touch second degree, meaning like this. A lot of things, when a person, generally speaking, a person can't transfer tumah directly, because you became tome from a source. You're now a degree lower, and then you go touch something else. It's not strong enough to make the third thing tome usually, but liquids can become tome even from a low level contact. That's the spiritual nature of liquids. So what's happened is, since your hands are wet, the water on the hand has become tome. And now you have tome water on you, which the tome water makes you tome, your hand tome again. But now you have to wash your hand another time. You have to dry it first, just by the way. It didn't mention that here. You have to dry it, and once it's dry, then you wash a second time. If you already made a blessing, and then your wet hand got touched, and you have to wash a second time, we don't make a new blessing. Right? There's still because you're still involved in the act of washing. So that's what we do. All right. Now comes what we touched on before, number 7, about putting your hands into something as kosher for a mikveh. Misha ein loy kli. Someone does not have a vessel. Yachal litba yada b'nahar. He can dunk his hands in a river. A mikveh kosher tefillas noshim, or in a mikveh that is kosher for women to use, but mine or a spring. A fill ein bar by himself. The spring doesn't even have to have 40 saw, which is the minimum size of a mikveh. A running water spring doesn't need to have. As long as it's enough for to cover the entire hand in one shot. So I'll just to mention, when it says a mikveh, he particularly specified a mikveh that's kosher for women. So today, let's go back a step. In the times of Beis Hamikdash, when we would either eat the sacrifices and various things, whoever ate it or to go into the Beis Hamikdash had to be tahor. So of course we need the ashes of the red heifer if we've been in contact with the deceased. But even for other types of tahara to become tahor, you had to go to a properly kosher mikveh, fully kosher mikveh, and you would make a blessing. So it's men and women would go on a biblical level to the mikveh, make a blessing, and to become tahor. Today, as there's no, unfortunately, I mean, hopefully it will be later today, but so far today there hasn't been a Beis Hamikdash, and we're not bringing sacrifices, and there's no requirement to be tahor on a biblical level. So therefore, generally speaking, people don't go to the mikveh on a biblical level. The only exception, there's 2 exceptions. One is a lady after her menstrual period, when she's no longer when she's counted the clean days and various things, to leaving a niddah. And this is not because, it's not because of the regular Tumah Tahara, it's because of a side issue. The side issue, if it wasn't for the side issue, we wouldn't care. So she became Torah from a niddah. She's not going to Beis Hamikdash. Who cares? The reason that we care, and I shouldn't make light of we don't care, because it's a very, very important mitzvah, foundational mitzvah, is because a side issue is that as marital relations need to be in the spiritual system of life, not the spiritual system of death. So we can't have marital relations when the lady is a niddah. So therefore, to come out of being a niddah, she needs to go to a properly kosher mikveh on a biblical level. And the other time that we'll use that we require mikveh of biblical level for people is geirim, converts. Right? When they convert and they go to mikveh, as male or female, they need to go to a proper biblical level kosher mikveh. But other times, let's say there are many communities where men go to mikveh regularly for Yom Tov or for Shabbos. Many people go every day, right? Trying to go every day. So when the men are going, it's a custom. It's more customary. It's not a biblical requirement, and therefore they are often quite lenient when they build the mikvahs. So many men's mikvahs would not be kosher for a lady to go to, because they've cut certain corners. That
So
is a
Rabbi,
whole. Yes.
what about a Balkari? I mean, it's got to be a kosher mikvah for him to.
No. Well, first of all, like Gezeira, it never really took on. It's something that's not didn't really go into halacha. Even though there was a period of time, but close to 2,000 years, it hasn't really been a halacha
So it's the
requirement.
Rabbanan. It's the
It's not even.
Rabbanan.
It's not even. It's not even the Rabbanan today. There was an attempt to make it a decree. It would prove too hard for the populace, and was rescinded in Talmudic times. So there's no obligation for a person, and that's so the people aren't familiar with the terms. Balkari is a man who's had a seminal mission. There was a attempt to put in rabbinically that the person shouldn't study Torah or say words of davening till they go to the mikveh.
Yeah, Rabbi, you have to mute the background noise.
Yeah, but it ended up being too hard. When I say hard, I don't mean too hard, like to put people out. Sometimes we have to exert ourselves and put ourselves out for Torah, but it became too hard, like it became impossible. It became too difficult for people, for the communities to keep this, and so it was rescinded. So it's never been. That's because there, in concept, should be such a thing. That's one of the reasons who men got to mikveh every day. It's one of the reasons behind it. But still, a lot of the mikvahs, as well as that, since it's not a full-blown decree, was a failed decree, we'll say, it could be it's good enough, even for that, even to be lenient. Even when they made the decree, they said like a person who's unwell, they could pour water over him. So it was never, the decree was never to have a proper kosher mikveh. And that's so many men's mikvahs are not really a proper mikveh, and just something to bear in mind. So it wouldn't work to put your hands in it.
So can you immerse vessels, kalim, in
No,
those mikvahs?
no. So no, the mikvahs that are not, the corners are cut. You couldn't immerse kalim. Couldn't immerse vessels in either. Yeah. So the vessels have the same requirements as ladies. In other words, anything that's a Torah prohibition, Torah requirement, and for converts, so in Sydney, although there is a men's mikveh, but when converts, they always took them to the ladies' mikveh, even the men. They went during the day, the ladies only using it at night, because that was a really, high quality mikveh. And the men's mikveh was
I think a
little
lot
bit
of
different.
people are under the impression that men's mikveh you can immerse kalim, you can talk about kalim.
Well, some of them are built to the same standards. Let's say, for example, the mikveh in Phoenix, it's a mikveh complex. So the men's and women's mikvahs, it's in the same building. In other words, they're attached. So the pool you immerse in is attached through openings to the actual boiler, the actual mikveh pit. And through that water coming in contact with the water that's in the pool area, that makes it mikveh water as well. So it's the same boiler, same boilers. I mean, they have 3 boilers, but underground, but the same boilers that are for the men's mikveh for the women's mikveh. Right?
I'm saying in a situation where it's not like that, a lot of people think.
So summer, and some of them they build them the same requirements.
Yeah,
But
so people think it's a mikveh that has the word mikveh
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
It's for sure good for my
But they're
cup.
not, there's a shul about an hour from here, place called Casa Grande, and so 2 of my sons, one is a construction business, one of them is helping him, so they go there they're doing some work, so they go early and they daven in the shul Casa Grande. So the mikveh there has a sign. The men's mikveh has a sign. This is not kosher for utensils. They sent me a picture of it. That was they knew I'd be interested. But it's we're not going to say it's not. Sorry.
Person could think that my cup is more strict than for a human body.
Yeah. Well, now you know. That's right. So it can be misleading at times. It can be misleading at times. You have to be careful. Men's mikvahs, you have to be careful. In general. Having said that, I would put it to you that even when they are kosher, you should try and avoid immersing vessels in the mikvah that people use, because it's not unheard of for a glass to slip out of the fingers and to break, or or a little fork to get stuck somewhere in a corner, and you can't really get it out, and people are going their bare feet afterwards, and so that's why they try and have special mikvahs just for utensils. Either they're attached to the mikvah, or they're okay. So you could immerse your hands in something that would be kosher for a mikvah. So a river, a proper mikvah, or a spring. The Shasad Chak, he says, in a time of great need, you can even immerse your hands into snow, because snow that's still as is considered a accumulation of water. Now the provision is im yesh al pnei haaretz harbe k'mo she'er mikveh. You have a lot of snow in one area, like the same amount as a mikveh. So there's been a good snowfall, and not that it melted and refroze and all those kinds of things. It's still the actual snow. Now, if you have to wash your hands from a pump, right? This is going to be similar to the question that you asked about the faucet. You have to put one hand near the ground. And with the other hand, you work to pull the water up. And afterwards, you switch hands. So again, in other words, it's your koyach, it's your energy that's making the water flow. So you're like pouring. It's like the equivalent of turning on the tap, turning off the tap, turning on. Or have someone else draw the water for you. But if your hands are high above the ground, they also learn the water is invalid. Right? So and this is why I said from the sink it probably doesn't work. But it could be. It's directly, if your hand is close enough to the outlet where it comes out. So that's what we need to do. Number 8, we're gonna have what's the definition of water, essentially, we're gonna say. So let's use it simply. It's water that's drinkable. Right? So test number 8, we're going to speak about the water that's its appearance change, it's discolored. So dirty water. Whether it's because of its place, in other words, it's in mud, right? The water is in a muddy place, so you're gonna scoop up now from your cup it's like brown water. Or whether it's because something spilled into the water that's polluted it. Either way, this water is no good to wash your hands. It has to be clean. But if the change of color was natural causes, then the water is kosher. So I'm not sure how water changes color because of something not there. Look, I mean, I guess you go to the ocean, and the ocean is, I mean, there are some beaches where the water is crystal clear and you can see the sand, but usually it's not so. But if you take a cup of water, the water is cleanish. It's pretty clean. I mean, it's salt water, so maybe you don't want to drink it, but it's clean water. So that's opposed to water that changed color because there was an oil slick or something, or some other type of pollution. Right? Ma'im shenasa behem halacha. Now, water that's been used water. So Gugoin is going to give an example. Sheducha behem kalim. You wash the dishes in it. So you've washed the dishes in this water. Oy sheshar behem yirakos. Or you soaked vegetables. Oy shenasa behem kalim imashkim l'sonanam. Or you had containers of something, and you wanted to cool them, so you put into water to cool them off. Or you use them to for measuring, right? You want to see how much a cup holds or something, whatever it is. Gam came pasulim. This water is also no good. That's not called nice, clean, regular water. Also, water that's become disgusting. In other words, we're going to give an example. In other words, it looks clean. If you didn't know what happened to it, you might call it clean water. So, going for example, shosmem kelev or chazi, a dog drank from it, or a pig drank from it. So you can imagine there's a bowl of water on the table, and to you it looks like clean water. You would have quite happily washed your hands with it, maybe even drank from it. But a dog came and drank out of it. So probably you're not going to want to drink that water anymore. It's not trying to be gross, but it's sticking its tongue in. They're lapping it up. Even though on the surface the water's clean, it's not dirty, it's not discolored, but it's become gross. Because it's considered now dirty water. So there's an opinion that you can't even use that water to wash your hands. And we should be concerned of that opinion. In other words, certainly in the first instance, we shouldn't use it. If there's no other water, then perhaps it could. Yes, David.
It's odd that they're using the same language. They're saying on one hand, you don't want to use this water to wash from because a dog drank from it. And on the other hand, how do you know that the water is clean? Because it's fit for a dog to drink from.
Okay. So that's true. So in other words, water has to be drinkable. Now, what's considered drinkable? So today we have very high standards, right? There's water that we reject today that our great grandparents would have sold anything for. It's to really get such clean water. So today we're very fussy, but in general, yeah. So we say a water that is clean enough that a dog would drink. So the dog's not going to drink water that's totally polluted, or is had there's a rotting carcass in it and it's just fouled the water. They're not gonna do that. A little bit of sediment, a little something they'll drink. So that's generally for a mikveh though. For the washing of the hands, we have a little bit higher standards. So we really don't want any discoloration of the water. So it's even higher. It's even cleaner than a dog would drink from. But you are correct. On the one hand, the fact this animal is drinking from it shows that it's nice, clean water. Nevertheless, once it drank from this container, it's gross you out. I don't see many people sitting with their dog and there's a nice bowl of water and the dog's lapping it up and they've got a straw, going from the same. The truth is, I'm sure there's someone. It's always someone out there, but it's not the norm. It's not the norm. Okay, test number 9. Now, Mishloi Nata Yadav Nagabamayim. Someone who did not yet wash his hands. And he touches the water. So he's got the cup, and as he was picking it up, he stuck his finger in the cup. Loi Nitmo Maim. He did not make the water no good. The water's still good. Right? There's a lot of confusion about this, because we say water that's been used water is no good. So used it to wash your dishes, we said, used it for something else. When I was a student in yeshiva, there was someone who thought he was being funny, so he didn't know these halachas. So this is the washing for the morning, but essentially it's the same laws. At least in the first instance. Washing in the morning of hands will take even less quality water, but in the first instance should be the same as washing for bread. And I guess not everyone had studied these laws and didn't realize that it says explicitly just touching the water is not the problem. You actually have to use it for something to make it no good. But he convinced people that touching it was the same as using it. And he used to go around, after everyone was already in bed and had the negavas next to the bed, he would go and stick his hand in everyone's water to say, go get a new one. He thought he was humorous. But it didn't do anything anyway, except be annoying. Right? That he accomplished. But just we don't get off the topic, but just the my favorite yeshiva dormitory story. So there was someone he was given the job in the morning to wake everyone up. So most bochum are responsible, and they've got their own alarms. Most yeshiva students, and they get up, they're keen to learn. And some people find it hard to get up in the morning, so someone wakes them up. It's a great thing. They knock on the door and they say it's time to get up. Good, and encourage them. But there was one fellow who did not get up no matter how many times he was woken up. And the person whose job was to wake everyone up, he was being held responsible. This person, I guess, was claiming he never came. I mean, he did come, but he just slept through it. So the person whose job was to wake everyone up, he went downtown and he bought a tarantula. I mean, the biters had been removed, it was for a pet, but he bought a tarantula. And the next morning he knocked on the door, said time to get up. And the guy didn't get up, so he threw the tarantula on him. Anyway, for the rest of the year, that guy was up an hour before anyone else was up. It worked. That's the story. All right. But back to the kids of Shulchan Aruch. More important matters. So touching the water is not a problem. And therefore, someone who leaves the bathroom and he's going to wash, he can take a handful of water out of the barrel to wash his hands. Now, Baruch Hashem, today, we don't need to take water out of a barrel. We just turn on the faucet, we get nice clean water. But in concept, someone has to wash his hands. When the Shalom Ksholim Latis Yadayim and the rest of the water in the barrel remains kosher. Again, today it's not an issue. We don't really have to fill up a barrel of water from the well once a day or something, or a few times a day, and have reserve of water and get water wherever we want, Baruch Hashem. But if he didn't just take the hands and just touch it, he actually put his hands in there to wash them. He washed his hands in the barrel. Then that's a different story. Then a filo tawa bayrak etzba katana l'nekoisa, if he only stuck in his little finger to clean the little finger. So not to touch it, but to clean. So he's used it to clean himself. Nifs l'kolamayim, the entire barrel of water has become disqualified from being used for washing for bread. Because work was done with this water. It's not new water, not new fresh water. Okay. Hen. My meluchim. Salt water. Now, salt water, we'll come back to salt water in a minute. Let's just take this rule. Salt water, tzeruchim, we're going to say putrid water that's spoiled, it's gone bad, something in it. Marim, or it's bitter, or achurim, or it's very opposite of opaque. It's because of all the mud. It's like you can't see. It's like very, very dirty. In the shtiyas kelev, if a dog wouldn't drink it, until you can't wash your hands. But I just point out the salt water even though it's disqualified from taking in the cup and pouring onto your hands to wash, if it's the ocean, right, something that's kosher for a mikveh, it's still kosher to dunk your hands in for bread, right? So you can immerse. It's kosher for immersing, but it's not kosher for pouring. Okay, so we've discussed the cup, we've discussed the water. Now we're going to discuss the person. Yud Aleph, number 11. Kaidim in the tilla, before you wash,
So
you know,
if a person's at the ocean and he wants to wash for bread, he can't take the water from the ocean and wash
yeah, he
for
can't
bread.
take the water in a cup, but he can immerse his hands in the ocean. Yeah.
And still say the bracha al asidayim.
Well, then he'll say al tefilas yadayim. Look, if he said al natilas yadayim, actually he doesn't have to make new bracha. It works. But in the first instance, he should say al tefilas yadayim on the immersing one's hands. So we discussed the type of cup we need. We discussed the type of water. Now we'll discuss the person. Kaidem hanatila. Before a person washes, you have to make sure your hands are clean, and there's nothing that stops the water from touching your skin.
Intervening.
Yeah, it's nothing intervening. It's nothing that's going to stop it. So, physical dirt. So often a person has to wash their hands with soap and water, and sometimes that's a good idea before you eat anyway. Depending where you've been. But you go wash hands, soap and water, dry them, and then wash the hands. I don't want to say ritually because it's not a ritual. Has a spiritual effect. But say he's religious, he's spiritual washing. Now, someone has long fingernails. He has to clean under them. So there shouldn't be any muddled dirt under the nails. That's also chatzitza. Now, likewise, he should remove rings so there won't be a chatzitza, an intervening thing. So a person wears rings. Now, again, I'll clarify this. The in other areas, we're not gonna mention it here, unless I forgotten. But I think it's not here. But in other places, we talk about the concept. Let's say someone has something that's never removed. So for a ring, we'll say if they knead their dough and they don't take the ring off. No, it's even then they don't take it off. Then it's not an issue. So there are some ladies who never take their ring off ever. In which case it's they bathe with it, they knead with it, they do whatever they do. So they would so they wouldn't have to take it off to wash. But people who remove it for other reasons, they ever remove their rings, and they're gonna have to nevertheless would still remove it for mikvah. When they goes to mikvah, they still remove their rings. But anyway, that's but you see most ladies, you'll see that they take off the rings before they wash for bread. It's don't forget them next to the sink, especially in a restaurant or something, right? Make sure you paying attention and you put them back on, or you take them with you. All right, Yud base. Voice. Someone's hands are dyed, right? So they're colored. So my son was a sofer. He often has ink stains on his hand. So we're talking about im ein sham mamoshes etc. There's no mamoshes like a substance. There's no substance to it. So sometimes you have something, let's say like a nail polish. There's substance, you could scratch it off. Right? It's a separate substance that's sitting on your, and sometimes you have ink on you can also scratch it off. But there's some type of remnant on the skin. In other words, there's no substance. It's just color. The skin has colored. So that's what we're talking about here. So if there's substance, you have to remove the substance. But if there's color without substance, kim chazus ba'alma, it's just a look. Right? It's an appearance. Loi chav chatzitza. This is not considered a chatzitza. It's not considered an intervening thing. There's nothing there. But if there's some type of substance there, has something you could scratch off, you could remove. And even if it's only a small amount, this is a chatzitza. However, if a person is a craftsman, he's a tradesman, the haino shut sabo, he's a dyer, right? He's paints. Chemishul tabak or a butcher, and he's got blood on his hands. Oishul Seifer, or he's a scribe, it's his hands are dirty from the ink. For Ragabakach, and that's his norm, right? He walks around. Yeah, I don't know how many people today really walk around, if they're butchers, they don't go home with the blood still on their hands and stuff. That's not their norm. They they wash it off. That's if they weren't wearing gloves to start with. And if they are in a profession, that the people in this profession, they don't care that this stuff is on their hands. For them, that's normal. They'll eat that way. They'll do everything that way. Then that's not considered a intervening substance when it's a small amount. Unless it's the majority of the hand. Okay, so again, today I'm not sure that many people are going to walk around in normal life. Like I said, the sofa with the ink without substance. Well, the substance they wash off, and sometimes you can't. There's ink; it's there for a few days. What can you do? But I don't think anyone walks around with mushy stuff from the butcher store. They don't go home like that. Sure they wash. But in the concept, if that was a norm, it's not a problem. Pain similarly, mish yesh lo maka al yadoi. He's got a wound on his hand. And he has some type of bandage that's going to be painful to remove. So often a person has a band-aid, they got a little cut, they put a band-aid, and an hour later wants to eat, there's no problem, take off the band-aid. It's not the end of the world. But sometimes people have injuries, God forbid. We should never know from such things, but sometimes we do. And it's going to hurt. It's going to pull off the whole healing, the scab, if you remove the bandage. Then loy have chatzitza. This is not considered an intervening. It's not a chatzitza. Now, for women to go to the mikveh, there's a whole separate laws, and he says, look at another chapter. We're going to be much stricter. Nevertheless, there's a time where you could leave things on also, even late, but we'll leave that aside. But for the washing of the hands, if it's something that's going to be painful, it's going to tear off, or let it be painful, we could leave it on. Okay, I think we sort of run out of time for today. Any questions before we finish up? Yeah, Abram, you're on mute.
Rabbi?
Yeah, if there's a shortage of water, can
Yeah.
you just pour it on the fingertips?
Not
Not the whole thing.
not in the first instance. I mean, if a person was in the desert and there's not going to be any water, maybe but it's better to wash the whole and then it would definitely be better to wash the entire hand twice rather than do the fingertips 3 times, something like that. Even let's say in Yom Kippur and things, or Tisha B'Av, let's say, when we wash only to the knuckles, if we're going to prepare food for children, we're touching food and things, we wash the whole hand. So once we're dealing with the food, it's really important the entire hand.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Okay, kalim can be dipped in riparian and a littoral setting, right? I mean, it doesn't have to just be it's just got to be a flowing river. It doesn't have to be a,
Can be a flowing river, but one of the things about flowing rivers is the only what runs year round is a kosher mikveh. Okay, I'm not going to say only, because let's say 90% of the time, only what is a kosher, what runs the whole year round is a kosher mikveh. So something only runs when it rains can be problematic. And then you have parts of the river. Let's say the river is 10 feet wide. But when the snow melts in the mountain, it expands to 12 feet wide. So that extra little bit that's next to now the new bank might not, again, there's other factors, but often that's not a kosher mikveh. So you sometimes have to be careful. The ocean is safer. Yeah, tides go in and out, but the ocean is the ocean. It's not really, it's not expanding artificially because of other factors. So rivers, you have to make sure it's actually the river. And man-made rivers and lakes can also be problematic because it wasn't necessarily real water. I mean, it was real water. I mean, sometimes they filled it up, from the plumbing. So you have to be, they piped it in.
I see. Now, what happens if, when you're dipping the kalim in the water, a crustacean, some kind of a shellfish or a squid or something, if you're in Australia, which you're probably familiar with, they get into
It's not going to be a problem. I mean, the fact that it's in the water is no problem. The issue is, was the entire vessel immersed? So if the second you put it in, some squid came and squeezed itself tightly on it, which means maybe the water didn't have a part of the vessel, so that might be an issue. But if you immersed it and then when you pull it up, there's something in the water, it's not a problem. I mean, you don't want to take it home with you.
No.
We don't want to take any lobsters home with us, but so you just pour it out. But that's not going to be a problem for immersing the vessel.
Okay, thank you.
No problems. All right. So wish everyone a wonderful week.
You too.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care. And welcome
Thank
back
you.
to some familiar faces.
Know me.
Yeah.
I know me. Welcome back.
I still want to know about those latkes that I heard about.